What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some early thoughts ahead of game week 27. I'm finally back making videos. It feels like it's been forever, even though it hasn't, but it has been a little while. I decided to take a bit of a break after game week 26, visited some friends and family, but I'm now ready to make plenty of videos ahead of 27. In this one, I got some early thoughts on some key players. Going to go through some notes of stuff that's happened over the last 5 to 7 days. I want to talk about blank game week 34 because the FA Cup is looking really interesting right now, and I'll take you through some early thoughts on my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with Erling Haaland, who's currently yellow flagged and missed Man City's FA Cup game at the weekend. Now, the first thing to say is we probably don't need to panic. It was very likely he was going to get limited minutes in that FA Cup match either way, and at most would have been on the bench. Now, Pep Guardiola did say that he had a few small problems, and that's why he wasn't in the squad. We know he got subbed early in game week 26 as well. So I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with him. I just don't think missing that FA Cup match is necessarily a massive problem. So at this point in time, we just need to wait for more news. And if he's fine for game week 27, that means that most of us should probably just hold on to him. The next 4 fixtures are pretty good. Newcastle at home, he's definitely captainable that week. Then Leeds away, Forest at home, West Ham away. And then obviously you got the blank in game week 31. So at that point, you can decide to sell him and take the hit on the value, or just bench him. So right now, wait for more news. If he's fine, probably keep hold of him. If he's out, let's say he's just out for one game week 27, what do you do with him? If you've got a great bench, you could keep hold of him. But I actually think in most cases, and this is probably what I would do, I would sell him. Because although the 3 game weeks afterwards are pretty good, we know he's blanking in game week 31. If he's going to miss a game week, he'll probably go down in value anyway. So the amount it will cost you to buy him back will be less. And you can start preparing for that blank if you're looking to kind of dead end or something like that. So Haaland to a different forward and then punt that money into midfield for a player that's going to play in 31. I know a lot of people are eyeing up Mo Salah. I don't hate that given the fixtures that Liverpool have got. So if he's going to miss one game week, I would be tempted to sell. Who for? If you don't have Thiago, that just seems really obvious to me. Very unlucky not to get a return against Arsenal. Brighton at home in 27, followed by Burnley away, Bournemouth away, Wolves at home, Leeds away. And if you're someone that's playing through the blank and not wildcarding afterwards, Everton at home 32, followed by Fulham at home, Man United away, West Ham at home. Just a really good pick. Nailed on, decent enough goal threat on penalties. Just good pick if you don't have him. That just seems super obvious. If you do already have him and you're having to downgrade Haaland, I think the player that I would probably look at is Ekitike. Now, you could, if you don't own him, go to João Pedro first, who's got a ridiculous amount of returns recently and has Burnley at home. But because it's Arsenal away, Villa away, Newcastle at home straight afterwards, I would probably ignore him. If you're sat there with 3 or 4 transfers, and you want to go Haaland to João Pedro, then chain it onto someone else, absolutely fine. If you're sat there with 1 transfer like me, I would suggest you've got to just hope for the best against Burnley and then not worry about him afterwards. So I would probably look more towards Ekitike. If you go for like a Strand Larsen, who a lot of people are bringing in right now, you've got that blank in game week 31 to contend with, but the 4 fixtures before that are not bad. I just think Liverpool's fixtures, Forest away, West Ham at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home, Brighton away is probably where I would look. And if you want to put that money into a Salah, into midfield, I really don't hate that either. Massive differential, definitely plays in 31, obviously has got pretty good fixtures. The only other thing to briefly talk about, what if he's fine and you still want to sell him? Because I know a lot of people are considering that. I don't mind it, but it feels a little bit... I don't know if forced is the right word. I just think it's a massive luxury. Like, if you want to do Haaland to Thiago and then get Salah as a huge differential that will play in 31 with good fixtures, I really don't mind it. I just don't think that Haaland is a bad pick, obviously, for the next 4 game weeks because the fixtures are good. We know what he can do. And that Newcastle game, he's definitely captainable, like I said. But it's not an issue. If you want to sell him and go for a differential punt, Haaland's not essential. So I think it's fine. And also, when you look at the game weeks coming up, I mean, this week, again, if you had multiple transfers for 27, you could bring in Cole Palmer as a 1-week punt. Like, if anyone's got Cole Palmer in their team, they should be captaining him this week against Burnley at home. Huge differential, great fixture. We know he's very likely to play. Game week 28, where Haaland's got, I should have already looked at this, Leeds away, like Man United at home to Crystal Palace. So you could go for someone like Bruno Fernandes for sure. You probably wouldn't go for Cole Palmer away to Arsenal. I mean, even someone like Thiago against Burnley away is not terrible. Game week 29, where Haaland's got Forest at home, pretty good pick. By the way, in game week 28, if you've gone for a Liverpool player, you could go for them at home to West Ham, like if you've got Salah. Game week 29, where City's got Forest at home. Chelsea away to Aston Villa. Arsenal, I guess you're probably not going to want to captain anyone. Brighton away. Liverpool got Wolves away, so that looks pretty good. And I guess if you had to, you could go Bruno Fernandes against Newcastle away as well. Game week 30, similar conversation. Man City away to West Ham. I mean, Bournemouth are away to Burnley. You probably wouldn't want to captain anyone from them. But if you've still got Cole Palmer, he's Newcastle at home. You could go for Gabriel against Everton at home. Bruno Fernandes against Villa at home. Or even Salah against Spurs at home, honestly, or Wirtz or Ekitike, whoever you wanted to go for. So there are options, but I would say this. If Haaland's fully fit, I think you can make an argument he's the best captain for probably 2 or 3 of the next 4 game weeks. That's why I wouldn't be in a rush to get rid of him right now until we get more info. So let's talk about Declan Rice next. I know a lot of people are thinking about selling him ahead of Spurs away in game week 27. He's only returned twice in the last 6 matches that he's played, and both of those returns have been defensive contributions. Now, that's not necessarily a problem, right? I've got Elliot Anderson. I love it when he gets defensive contributions, but I'm only paying 5.3 million for him. Declan Rice is currently 7.6 million. You need some attacking returns as well. So 2 defensive contributions and nothing else in 6 games is not great. We'll see what he does against Wolves away, obviously this midweek as part of the second game of double game week 26. Ultimately, this is not a player with amazing attacking stats. I know he went on a run of getting lots of returns, some big double-digit hauls as well, but that's not really the expectation that I would have for him. Now, obviously, he's capable of more than this, but getting 2 returns in 6 is not, like a complete shock, I would say. So I don't think there's any need to panic. He's fully capable of going on a little run of kind of 6 points here, 7 points there. And Spurs away is a pretty good fixture. Then it's Chelsea at home, Brighton away, Everton at home. He's a player that I think is more than okay to hold until the blank in 31. I basically wouldn't panic about selling him this week. I wouldn't go out of my way to do it. But if you want to get rid of him, again, I think that's absolutely fine. Like, he's nowhere near essential. There's other attacking players at that price or below you could take a punt on that are massively differential as well. And obviously, he does have that blank in 31, and most people are going to sell him by then anyway. One thing I will say is I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Dangu Utara and maybe Sharda, because Brentford, as we've already discussed with Thiago, Brighton at home, Burnley away, Bournemouth away, Wolves at home, Leeds away, and then good fixtures afterwards if you're playing through the blank and not wildcarding. I don't hate that at all. Utara is a massive differential, frees up money as well. My only slight concern is, will Utara keep... I'm pretty sure he will just keep starting, right? He's played well, so have Brentford recently. Why would he come out of the team? He's played 90 minutes back-to-back over the last 2 game weeks, but obviously Sharda's been suspended. So I think what I'm trying to say is, if you can put this transfer off until game week 28, just see what happens in 27. Does Sharda come straight back in? How does that affect Utara? I'm sure they'll both play good minutes over this run, and probably both of them will be good picks. But I think unless you're in an absolute rush to get rid of Rice this week, maybe give him the Spurs game, which is not that bad, then decide what to do in 28. Because I'll tell you now, if both Utara and Sharda play similar minutes, I think I just about prefer Sharda. I think he's got a little bit more goal threat, but he is more money. So again, what will the money from going Dangu Utara free you up? Either way, both are good picks, I'm sure, and they'll both continue to start. I think that back four will remain in place. The 4-3-3 setup that Brentford have got. So yeah, lots of people considering selling Rice. It's fine. I might do it myself in game week 28, but there's absolutely not a rush. Yes, the returns haven't been great recently, but we know how quickly that can turn around. And I'm sure if he does something against Wolves, that might put people's minds at ease as well. Suarez João Pedro has more transfers in this week than Cole Palmer, and it's no surprise when he's got 32 points in the last 2 game weeks. Imagine thinking about bringing him in and then not doing it. That would be absolutely devastating. Is he still worth thinking about for game week 27? Now, obviously, that's a great fixture, Burnley at home. But after that, it's Arsenal away, Villa away, Newcastle at home, Everton away, and then Man City at home in game week 22. So the fixtures definitely aren't anywhere near as good. It's worth saying at this point, I know some of us are still worried about his fitness. He started 11 of the last 12 game weeks. The only one he missed was with that thigh injury. I think it was against Crystal Palace. And he's also done 3 back-to-back games where the gap has only been 3 days. So 3 times over the last 12 game weeks, he's played a match and then started the next game 3 days later. We know he's not 100% fully fit. He said it himself. They're obviously still managing him because he got a rest in the FA Cup. But overall, he's going to play quite a few minutes. I think basically, if you're sat there flush with transfers, it's worth considering him, even as a 1 week punt, because you can bring him in for captaincy, huge differential, and then maybe look to offload him for game week 28. For those of us that are sat there with 1 or 2 transfers, it's probably just going to have to be a player that you let go and you concentrate on other stuff instead, especially if you're on a strategy where you're trying to play through 2 blank game week 31, then wildcard afterwards. You've got to make sure that every transfer counts at this point. And so bringing in a player you know you're probably going to want to sell in game week 28 with only 1 transfer or 2, it's probably not worth it. And I definitely wouldn't rip up my team to get him in. I think if you're on him, captain him. If you've got lots of transfers and you want to bring him in for a short-term move, I also think that's fine. For the rest of us, we've probably just got to accept that we've missed a bunch of points. We're probably going to miss some more in 27. But in the grand scheme of things, it's probably better to concentrate on getting cheaper players in that have less of an effect on your overall team, i.e. you don't have to rip up your team to bring them in, and are useful for game week 31. I think players like Wilson at Fulham, I've mentioned Sharda and Utara, that you could look at Bournemouth midfielders as well. They're all pretty good. Even Man United ones are still worth considering too. So I've just jotted down a few notes of other bits and pieces that I think is worth discussing that's happened over the last 5 to 7 days, because it has been a little while since I recorded a video. One of those things is Thomas Frank obviously being sacked by Spurs, and they've now brought in Igor Tudor instead as an interim manager until the end of the season. I think it's very, very unlikely that he will get given the job in the summer. It seems all the talk is around Pochettino coming back after the World Cup, so we'll see what happens there. Is there going to be a new manager bounce? Is there any reason to go for Spurs players? No, basically. I mean, there could be a new manager bounce, but I wouldn't be rushing out to buy Spurs players. They've got Arsenal at home this week, which is going to be really tough. Not a great first game to have, although if you get the win, that gets fans on side very quickly. Then Fulham away, Palace at home, Liverpool away, Forest at home. Now, I'm not saying ignore Spurs players necessarily completely over that run. Let's say you get to game week 31 where they got Forest at home, and you decide to sell Erling Haaland, you want to take a 1 week punt, why not Dominic Solanke? That could be an option rather than a Watkins or someone like that instead. But I don't think you buy them now. Let's see what happens over the next couple of game weeks. Arsenal at home, Fulham away, and then go from there. I don't think any of the defenders are suddenly going to become defensive contribution monsters or anything like that. Like Xavi Simon's punt, maybe. But at least wait until that Crystal Palace game. And even then, you've got Liverpool away in game week 30, so it's not great. Maybe you buy them in game week 31. Forest also got a new manager. Vitor Pereira is back in the Premier League. Again, could there be a new manager bounce? Maybe, but does it really matter when it's Liverpool at home, Brighton away, City away, next 3? Probably not. Like, if you've got Elliot Anderson, you might be keeping hold of him because he's cheap as a squad player. No one should be bringing in any other players. If you get to Fulham at home in 30, Spurs away in 31, you want to take a punt because they've looked really good, maybe you do it. But right now, it's just a complete ignore. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with those two teams, especially Spurs. Because you can look at them and say they're too good to go down, but it's happened to teams before. And they're not that far off the relegation places. And they've got 2 wins in 17? They should be good. They should be too good to go down, but we'll see. Going to be really interesting. But maybe we come back to them later on. For Arsenal, Saliba started in the FA Cup. So if you took a punt on him for the double game week, obviously annoying that he missed out, but he should play against Wolves away. Calafiori picked up an injury, I think, in the warm-up. Saka played instead, not as left back, by the way. Lewis Skelly was due to play in midfield. He moved to left back instead. So if you've got Calafiori, I mean, there's nothing you can do with it. I know it's annoying for the double, but it does seem like he's probably not going to start that Wolves game. I think with Calafiori, I said this before, I actually thought there was a chance he'd start twice and miss the FA Cup match. So I got that massively wrong. I'll apologise. But I did also say he's a bit fragile. He seems to pick up injuries all the time. I just think he's probably worth ignoring. Timber wasn't in the squad for the FA Cup match. I actually haven't seen Arteta say anything about that. I do apologise. Maybe I've completely missed it. But I suspect that, again, was just load management. We saw him miss a training session recently. Then he was training the next day, played the game at the weekend. I think he'll probably be fine. So I wouldn't panic about that. And obviously, you've got another game before game week 27 to assess what's happening there. For Newcastle, Bruno Guimaraes is out for 8 weeks, so he's got to go. If you were holding on to him at this point, there's just no need to do that anymore. I guess, does that have any knock-on effects? I think there's a stat going around. I should have fact-checked this before I record it. It cannot be true that since he signed, Newcastle haven't won a game without him. That can't be true. Maybe it is. Maybe I'll go and look it up, actually. Hold on. Okay, so it does seem to be true. I looked up this article on the BBC website. Now, it is from the 25th of January, 2026, but the only 2 games he's missed recently in the league, they have lost. So it does seem to have some substance, but I think it's also worth saying, since his debut 4 years ago, as in this article, they've not won any of the 9 games. So it's just one of those stats that sounds way worse than it probably is, because ultimately he doesn't miss many matches. So it will be a struggle without him. And I guess the knock-on effect is Newcastle will be weakened. But I think because of the players people own in FPL, it's probably not a huge deal. Obviously, Lewis Hall got benched in game week 26, so he may need to go, although I think that was just minutes management. But if you've got Chow, they have got a couple of games coming up where you could play him in. Like Sunderland at home in game week 31, if you don't need him before that, you could just hold him on your bench. And I think Boltamada, Visser, Gordon, these are just not players to own anyway. So it's going to be a bit of a nightmare for Newcastle. And it's maybe not great for the defenders that you own in FPL, but it doesn't suddenly make them must sell or anything like that. So for Bournemouth, James Hill started again in game week 26. That's now 8 matches in a row in the league that he started. I think we can probably assume he's nailed at this point. He has gone up from 3.9 to 4 million, but that's still incredible value. And actually in game week 26, he absolutely smashed the defensive contributions. He got 20. Senesi didn't even hit 10. And Hill got an assist as well. So he's looking like a really good pick. And it does seem difficult to make a justification to go for Senesi at the moment. I will say on defensive contributions, they do change from game to game. So I don't think we should now say that Hill is amazing for Defcons and Senesi's terrible. I'm sure at some point Senesi will start getting them again. But it is hard to justify the price difference. And if you're struggling for cash, you should just go for Hill. And I think actually looking at him right now is probably quite a good idea, because the fixtures that Bournemouth have got coming up until the blank are pretty good. So West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Brentford at home, Burnley away, then Man United at home in 31. That's probably the only game you wouldn't really want to use him in. But if you had to, because it's a blank and you don't want to spend additional transfers to switch to a different defender when some teams aren't playing, it's not the end of the world to play him for that match. Rayan started again, so that's 2 starts in his first 3 games. He's got 2 goals, 1 assist. He looks like quite an exciting pick. The only thing is, he's only just joined the team. At some point, Tavernier will back. How will that? Will be back. How will that affect Rayan's minutes? I'm always like, the fact he's come in straight away and done really well is probably just a massive boost to his minutes, and he probably will continue to start. But there's always that slight hesitation of not completely knowing like what's going to happen, because he is new to the league. So I wouldn't assume that he's just going to keep getting loads of minutes. But I think when you come in and absolutely smash it straight away, it does no harm, right? And I think if we look at the last match, he played 90 and it was 86 before that. So I like him as a punt for 5.5. I think the reason that I'm a bit more cautious right now, again, is because of the blank. Every transfer counts, and there is some small risk with him. But because of the fixtures, look, if someone wanted to go for a cheap midfielder right now and they pick Rayan, I really don't hate it. I really don't. For Sunderland, Diarra took a penalty ahead of Lefay in the FA Cup. When I tweeted about that, Rob TFPL replied with a quote from an article, which basically made it sound like they might share penalties. So I don't think it's a case that Lefay is completely off them, but he's not necessarily going to take every single one. I don't know how often people are going to think about playing Lefay over the next few weeks anyway, but just something to note that he might not be on penalties every time they get one. For Arsenal, I know I've already spoken about some of their players, but I guess I've got to quickly react to the Gabriel triple captain pain. I actually took a break over the last few days, and I was kind of half watching that because it was on my iPad. The internet connection wasn't all that good. And for him to like hit defensive contributions, then not long after lose the clean sheet, it is a killer. This is what happens when you captain defenders. I'm not saying it was a bad choice, right? I literally triple captained him. But when they lose the clean sheet, it is like a killer blow, because you know the chance of getting a big score are like so much lower unless they can go and get you a goal, which even though Gabriel's great for that, doesn't happen all that often. It's worth saying there's still another game, right? If they can get a clean sheet against Wolves and he can pick up defensive contributions, I mean, even that would be like 11 points, right? Or if you can get a clean sheet and a couple of bonus, right? That's 11 points, triple captain. Is it amazing? No. Will people get bigger scores over the rest of the season? Potentially. But remember, you can still captain those players. So if Haaland has a great double game week at some point and people triple captain him, okay, he might go and smash 20 points, right? Let's say Gabriel's got 11. I can still captain Haaland later. So all I lose out on is 11 points. Do I want to be losing 11 points? No. But like, we're talking worst case scenarios here. I mean, actually, the worst case scenario is even worse because Gabriel could lose the clean sheet. But you know what I'm trying to say. So it's annoying. Would I do it again? Maybe. I mean, this is the second time I've triple captained a defender. The first time did not go well. I did say quite a few times before I activated it, I just wasn't 100% sure at any point last week because it was a defender and because both games were away from home. But the decision to use it was because I didn't know how many more doubles there were going to be. Like, there's definitely going to be one in game week 33. That might be the only one. And I'm probably going to bench boost that week. And actually, bench boost might be pretty good. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So yeah, look, it sucks. It really does. If you had Saliba, that sucks as well. There's another game. Maybe to get something against Wolves, but it is away. It's not ideal. And then for Brentford, Collins was benched again. I think people are going to be looking at Brentford defenders over the next few weeks because the fixtures are good. I don't think you can go there. I think you've got to ignore them because Collins seemed to have, I think he had stitches or something because of an issue that happened in training. Then he played 30 minutes against Villa. Then he's had nothing against Newcastle and Arsenal. I just don't believe that he's going to stay out of the team. But you can't buy him because you're not sure when or if he gets back in. And when he gets back in, does he take Vandenberg's place or Ayer's place? We don't know. Now, my guess would be if Collins comes in, it'll be for Vandenberg. But I can't guarantee that. So I think you've got to ignore them. And the fixtures are really good. I'm not going to go through them again. I've already spoken about them through Tara and Thiago. We know they're good, right? And Collins is good for defensive contributions. He's not bad for bonus if they pick a clean sheet as well, or if they pick up a clean sheet. But I think you've got to ignore him. Like, because if you buy Collins, he doesn't start again. That's just a trap, right? Because you're going to want to continue to hold him in the hope that he comes back. If you go for Ayer, and then it's him that drops, like, it's just a nightmare. So I think if you're looking for a new defender right now, you've got to look at if you want to go cheap, you've got to look at players like, I mean, Richards maybe for Palace, but I think given they've got 2 away games after Wolves against Spurs and United, I'd probably leave that. Joachim Anderson, not bad all the way through to the blank in 31, or James Hill, I've already spoken about. I just wouldn't go near Brentford defenders right now because you could go for Coyote because you know he's going to start, but I think you really want the centre-back for the DEFCONs. So I would probably just ignore all of them until Collins gets back in, and then you know he'll probably stay there, and you'll also know which of the other centre-backs has dropped out, and that will give you more decision-making capabilities once you've seen that happen. So I just want to talk about game week 34 because that week specifically will have a big impact on what the blanks and double game weeks will look like for the rest of the season, and at the moment it's set up really interestingly. So as a reminder, in game week 34, teams will blank if they or their opponent reach the FA Cup semi-final. So as an example, right, Bournemouth play Leeds in game week 34. Bournemouth are out of the FA Cup, so obviously they can't get through to the semi-final, but Leeds are still in. So if Leeds got to the FA Cup semi-final, Bournemouth and Leeds would blank in game week 34. That match would need to be put somewhere else, and the chances are it will go to game week 33 as a double game week. So it's quite likely any teams that blank in 34 will double in game week 33. As I've said before, it's not a guarantee. That's just the most likely thing to happen. And so far, every match in game week 34 has at least one team that is through to the FA Cup 5th round, apart from Man United and Brentford, and that's because Brentford haven't played yet. They're playing on Monday night against Macclesfield, so Brentford will be big favourites, although it's worth saying that Macclesfield have already knocked out Crystal Palace, so they may well have another giant killing. And if Brentford do go out tonight, then we know for sure that Man United and Brentford have to play in game week 34 because both teams will be out of the FA Cup. But the fact that every other match has at least one team through to the next round is really interesting because that increases the chances that we will get lots of blanks in 34. The maximum would be 4, by the way. So the maximum amount of matches we can have called off is 4. So 8 teams potentially that could blank, and then potentially 8 teams that would double in 33. So the way that it's set up, because there's one team from every fixture through to the next round, we could potentially have a big blank in 34, which could be useful to have free hit for. and potentially a big double in 33, or bigger than maybe we would have hoped a few weeks ago, which could mean that bench boost is also quite nice that week. Now, again, that might not be what happens, right? If lots of Premier League teams get knocked out and there's one or two non-Premier League teams that get through to the FA Cup semi-final, that then reduces the amount of blanks you can have. Likewise, Arsenal and Newcastle are playing against each other in 34. That is the only fixture that has both teams through to the 5th round. So if Arsenal and Newcastle got to the FA Cup semi-final, then obviously only one fixture gets called off because they're playing against each other. So at that point, the maximum amount of blanks you would have would be 3 fixtures and 6 teams. And so that limits the amount of doubles you can have in 33. I guess the reason that I bring it up is by this point after the 4th round, we've usually got a few more fixtures that are definitely going to be on because both teams are out. And that's not what's happened so far. So like in every single... So Spurs are out, but Wolves are still in, for example. Everton are out, West Ham are still in. Sunderland are in, Forest are out. It's never usually set up like this after the 4th round. Now, once we have the 5th round draw, we might see some of these teams matched up against each other, so we know only one can get through to the next round. And the more rounds you get through, the more information you've got. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're thinking about using your wildcard free, I'd be very tempted even more so to just save it now. Because the blanks in 34 and the doubles in 33 could be a bit bigger than we were expecting because of the way things have gone so far. So it's really interestingly set up. We'll get the 5th round draw tonight on Monday, and we'll also know whether Brentford have gone through because that will have an impact as well. Like I said, if they go out, then Man United and Brentford will definitely play in 34. And by the way, if they definitely play, that means they definitely won't double. So as soon as Brentford go out of the FA Cup, you know Bruno Fernandes is not getting a double game week all season. So therefore, if you want to triple captain him in a double, it's just not going to happen. If Brentford can get through to the FA Cup semi-finals, then it's possible. Although that would obviously be not as likely to happen as some of the other teams like Arsenal, Newcastle, etc. So let's see what happens. I just thought it was interesting and worth bringing up. I think most people have already decided their chip strategy at this point. But if you are waiting, especially with bench boost, right? Some of you might be trying to force it over the next few weeks. If it's going to take too many transfers, I would just wait because 33 could be good. So just on my team ahead of game week 27, I think I'm pretty nicely set up as long as Erling Haaland is fit for Newcastle at home. And if he is, I will almost certainly just roll because I've only got one free transfer and I'm happy to captain him in that fixture. If Haaland is out, that leaves me in a tricky spot because I don't have multiple transfers to shift the funds around. Now, I could stagger it and get rid of Haaland this week, then use the money next week. But ideally, you want to use it straight away. And I think I'd be very tempted to go for Salah as a bit of a differential. So I'm not quite sure what I will do if he's out. And by the way, if I want to sell Anderson, so Elliot Anderson to Salah, that only leaves me 7.2 million to replace Haaland. And I think ideally I want to go and get Ekitike and just go all in on Liverpool. So instead, I would probably have to sell Declan Rice. Now, that's not a massive issue because Elliot Anderson's got a game in 31 and I'm benching him this week anyway, and Rice blanks. So that would probably be what I would do. I would do, not necessarily all in 1 week, but I would probably do Declan Rice to Salah, and then I'd have 9.4 million to spend on Haaland's replacement. Now, I wouldn't completely rule out Ollie Watkins at 8.6 million because Villa's fixtures are pretty good. They play West Ham at home in 31. But I do think he's going to get a reduction in minutes because of Tammy Abraham. He'll probably start the majority of Premier League games, but there is the chance he gets subbed early and maybe he misses the odd one. Now, the same thing could happen with Ekitike, right? We know that he's going to get managed along the next few game weeks as well because they don't have any other number 9. But he also has no competition. So as long as he's fit enough, he will start. So I quite like the idea of getting Ekitike. So Ekitike, Salah, and I've already got Van Dijk in place. Not that Wirtz is a bad pick, by the way. But if I'm selling Haaland, I might as well use the money on Salah, the penalty taker, right? So he's probably who I would look at. He's also taking set pieces a lot of the time from the right as well. So like right-hand side corners, etc. So let's wait and see on Haaland. My hope is he's fine and I'll just keep him because I think with one free transfer I could really do with rolling this week. Elsewhere, I've got Raya Gabriel double up against Spurs away. Van Dijk, the hero from game week 26, 17-pointer. I don't think any other defender has been more due a 17-pointer than Van Dijk, but I'll talk about that a bit more on team selection. And by the way, I know it was lucky. I understand it's lucky to get a 17-pointer. Joachim Andersen against Sunderland away. I'm benching Senesi against West Ham away. I'm not sure which of the two to play. My thinking right now is West Ham are actually doing really well in terms of scoring goals. And they're both good for defensive contributions. So I'm probably going to play Anderson. Plus, I just got a 17-pointer away to Sunderland from Van Dijk. So that's playing on my mind as well. Not that that matters at all, but I'm an idiot. Munoz against Wolves at home. So bought him in last week. Disaster. Hopefully he can get me something this week. Fernandes in Bournemouth double up against Everton away. That will just stay until 31. Declan Rice, like I said, no rush to sell him. But he will go by 31. And Enzo Fernandez, look, he's been disappointing the last couple of weeks. João Pedro and Palmer have got all the points, but his underlying stats have been fine. It's Burnley at home. I'm not selling him. And Thiago's already in place. So I quite like the idea of rolling this week to get one more week's worth of information before I potentially go for Brentford attackers, because they are on my mind. So as an example, if, let's just assume Haaland's fine and I roll, in game week 28, maybe I sell Rice then. Partly because there's maybe more attacking options that I can go for, but also because it deals with the blank in 31. And it also lets me sell Enzo. So Enzo after Burnley has Arsenal away. I probably want to sell him. And if I don't have the money to go for Salah, I really like Wirtz. He's playing all the time at the moment. He seems to have got over whatever fitness... Not that he had loads of fitness problems early on, but he was being subbed earlier, managed in the odd game. Now he's playing 90 minutes like all the time. And he's looking better and better. He's one of those players, when he gets a return, he's good for bonus as well. But to bring him in for Enzo, I've got to free up some money. So if I sell Declan Rice, I can go for Sharda or Utara. And I kind of just want to see them play again in 27, then make a decision. Like, ultimately, I just want to see the minutes. I think both players are good. Slight preference to Sharda, but not by much. I just want to make sure they both play, and they both play a good amount of time, and then make the call. It could be, by the way, that in 27, Utara gets subbed early, and then in 28, it's Sharda. Obviously, that can happen. But one more game would be useful for me. So that's probably my plan. I think by going Munoz, I basically stop myself being able to do Enzo to Wirtz in one move. So I've got to free up the money. And I can. And by the way, I don't have to sell Rice in 28. I could sell Munoz instead. But I think ideally, I want to keep Munoz at least for the Spurs away and Leeds at home games. I think selling Rice is just a little bit more interesting to me than selling Munoz. But it could be either way. I just think with defenders, I think I'd rather make that decision later, like in 31. Like, if I need a new defender, then I get them. It's just more interesting to buy attackers. So I think that's my plan. Hopefully roll and then fund a move for Enzo to Wirtz in 28. But if Haaland's out, it's a big decision to make. And also, captaincy is a problem for my team if Haaland's out. So maybe I would take a hit. Go to Palmer, then go to Salah. Lots of options. I'll have to wait and see. So more information needed this week. The FA Cup draw, the second game for Arsenal's double, team news. We'll talk about it all later on this week. If you've enjoyed that and glad that the videos are back, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you again tomorrow.